Hello everyone and welcome back to your international experience. Today I'll be discussing a very important topic which I'm hoping will be helpful to a lot of you. But before we go ahead and start the video, please click on the subscribe button below to stay up to date with the beautiful content that I'll be bringing to you on this platform. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Great. So like you can infer from the title of the video, I'll be discussing the path and process to becoming a permanent resident in Canada versus the US versus the UK. Okay, so I have a confession to make. In this video, I'll mainly be focusing on the path to becoming a PR in Canada because, like I said in my previous video, the US and the UK, they barely have any options for us international students to becoming permanent residents. But not to worry, I'll touch a little bit on the options that those countries have. So with the US, there are two main options for us to become PRs in the country. The first one is through the diversity lottery program, which I'm sure we all know it's a very chancy option because there is no guarantee that you're going to win the lottery, right? I personally have been playing the lottery for so many years, but I've still not been able to get my green card. And green card here is the permanent resident card in America. So I wouldn't bet on that option. You can go ahead and play it. You don't lose anything by playing the lottery, but I will not bet on it. So the second option is through your employer. For this option, you need to first find a company that's willing to sponsor your work visa in the country, and then after that, you can look into getting your green card. But take note that that with the Trump administration right now, it's really hard to find a company that's willing to sponsor you because a lot of companies are shying away from sponsoring, from employing international students and sponsoring their work visas. So with the UK, there are also two options. The first one is if you've lived in the UK for 10 years, for at least 10 years, you then become eligible to apply for permanent residence. So in this case, it's typically you staying in the country for 10 years as a student. The second option is if you've worked in the UK for at least 5 years, you can then apply to become a permanent resident. But again, just like with the US, I hear it's really hard to find a company that's willing to sponsor your work visa in the UK. So moving on to Canada. Canada has several paths and options for us international students to becoming permanent residents in the country. So this is the part where you want to fasten your seatbelt because it's going to be a long ride. Just kidding. So there are three main options to become a PR in Canada, which are the Skilled Worker Immigration Program, the Provincial Nomination, and the Quebec Selected Immigration Programs. For each of these, I'll be discussing the minimum requirements to become eligible for them. So there are three options under the Skilled Worker Immigration option, and these are all managed through the Express Entry system. And the Express Entry system is simply a points-based system that is used to evaluate applicants through this path. So the three options under the Skilled Worker Immigration option are the Federal Skilled Workers Program, the Canada Experience Class, and the Federal Skilled Trades Program. So for the Federal Skilled Workers Program, you must have a minimum of 1 year of continuous skilled work experience, and it has to be in the same job type. So you cannot go and be a teacher for 6 months and then work as a doctor for 6 months after that and think it's going to qualify under the Federal Skilled Workers Program. No, it has to be in the same job type. And you also need to meet the language requirements by taking a French or English test because obviously Canada is bilingual. So you need to take an approved French or English test and then meet the minimum required score. And then another requirement is that you must meet the minimum education requirement, which is you having at least a high school certificate. But the higher your level of education, the higher your number of points, because like I said, the Express Entry follows a point-based system. So for the Canada Experience Class, the minimum requirements are quite similar to that of the Federal Skilled Workers Program. There is no minimum education requirement, but you must also meet the language requirement just like with the Federal Skilled Workers Program, and you must have at least 1 year of work experience in Canada, and you must have obtained that work experience while working in Canada legally. It's easier to meet this requirement as if you graduate from at least a 2-year diploma, for example, you get 3 years work permit, and then you can work for 3 years in Canada, and in that process you can meet that requirement. So moving on to the Federal Skilled Trades Program, there is no education requirement. but there's a language requirement which is similar to that of the Canada Experience class and the Federal School Workers Program. So you still need to take a test for that as well. And you also need to have at least 2 years work experience in a skilled trade. So skilled trade includes jobs like electrician, chefs or cooks or butchers. And the 2 years of work experience must have been acquired over the past 5 years. The next option to becoming a permanent resident in Canada is through the provincial nomination option. So for this one, you need to apply directly to the province that you want to stay in, you want to live in, for them to actually nominate you to be a candidate for permanent residence. And take note that even after you get nominated by the province, you still have to go through the express entry system that I mentioned earlier to formally apply for your permanent residence in Canada. And so they're still going to evaluate your profile and make sure that you at least meet the minimum requirements, and make sure that you have the threshold points that are required for express entry. So the third option is through the Quebec Selected Immigration. So under this option, there are two main programs. The first one is the Quebec Skilled Worker Program, and the second one is the Quebec Experience Program. So for the Quebec Skilled Worker Program, you need to submit your expression of interest to immigrate to Quebec, and this is usually done through the ARIMA portal online. I'm going to be including links below to where you can find all of this information and educate yourself more on this, because this whole processes are a lot of information. So after you've submitted your expression of interest, you need to wait for the Quebec government to invite you to apply for permanent residence in Quebec. So for the Quebec Experience Program, you must first have a minimum of 1 year of skilled work experience, and you must have graduated from a Quebec college or university to qualify for this option. You must also have strong French skills to qualify under the Quebec Experience Program. So having discussed the 3 options to becoming a permanent resident in Canada, I must emphasize on the fact that for the skilled worker immigration option, you must be planning to live outside of the Quebec province, because Quebec has its own separate immigration program. And then for the provincial nomination option, Quebec and Nunavut do not have any provincial nomination programs. Every other province and territory in Canada does. And then for the Quebec Selected Immigration option, you must be planning to live inside the Quebec province. So take note that even after you meet the minimum requirements for either or each of the paths that I've just discussed, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be granted permanent residence in Canada automatically. No. You also have to make sure that you meet the minimum threshold points to be able to consider for permanent residence. And they also evaluate, Canada also evaluates your application to see whether you meet other factors like the age, the education, like I just mentioned, and several other factors that they consider before finally granting you that permanent residence. So it is a very, very long process, trust me. But you know what? I think it's really, really worth it. Yeah. So thank you for taking time to watch this video. I hope that it was very helpful and resourceful to you. If you need any more information or want to educate yourself any further, please feel free to check out the links that I'm dropping below. I know this is a lot of information to process. Trust me, it is a lot. And the process to becoming a permanent resident in Canada is very lengthy. So it is really important that you educate yourself very well beforehand. If you have any comments and questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment section below. If you have any video suggestions, things that you would like me to discuss in my upcoming videos, you can feel free to drop them below as well. And I'll be very glad to consider. Thank you very much, and stay tuned for my next video. Bye.